The stage lights burned hotter than the sun, and Elliot Kane was suffocating under their glare. Another wedding scene. Another fake bride. Another lie he'd sell to a packed theater. But tonight, his heart wasn't in the script, it was backstage. With her. Elliot, 28, was the darling of Chicago's theater scene. A rising star with a face that could break hearts and a voice that could mend them. His latest role in Love's Last Act demanded he propose to a woman he barely tolerated. Night after night, while the one he truly loved stood in the shadows, clipboard in hand, directing the chaos. Lila Harper, the stage manager, was the heartbeat of every production, her sharp wit and quiet strength holding the entire cast together. At 30, she'd seen every kind of drama on stage and off, but nothing prepared her for the way Elliot's gaze lingered on her during rehearsals. A secret only the dim corners of the theater knew. Tonight, the air felt heavier. The final dress rehearsal was unraveling, and Lila's voice crackled through the headset. Calm but firm. Elliot, you're half a beat late on the proposal line. Again. He caught her eye through the stage wing, her silhouette framed by the glow of a control booth. His chest tightened not from the script, but from the truth he'd buried for years. Elliot had known he was gay since he was 16, sneaking glances at boys in the locker room while pretending to care about prom dates. Acting came naturally. It was the perfect mask. But Lila wasn't just a colleague, she was the one person who saw through his performance, who noticed the way his hands shook when he spoke of love he didn't feel. She was a lesbian, fiercely private, her own heart guarded after a lifetime of small-town judgment in rural Indiana. Yet, in the quiet moments between cues, their shared glances spoke a language no script could capture. The theater, a historic gem in Chicago's Loop, was their sanctuary. Its creaking floors and faded velvet seats held their secret slate night talks over cold coffee. Stolen moments when the cast had gone home. But tonight, the stakes were higher. The show's director, Margaret Voss, a chain-smoking perfectionist, had invited a Broadway producer to opening night. A flawless performance could mean Elliot's big breaker exposed the cracks in his carefully crafted facade. As the rehearsal stumbled through Act 2, Elliot's co-star, Vanessa, flubbed her lines again. She was a diva with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, and her disdain for Lila was no secret. Maybe if the stage manager didn't bark orders like a drill sergeant, I could focus. Vanessa snapped, loud enough for the crew to hear. Elliot's jaw clenched. He wanted to defend Lila, but speaking out risked drawing attention to the feelings he wasn't ready to name. Lila, unfazed, adjusted her headset and called for a 5-minute break. The cast scattered, but Elliot lingered, pretending to adjust his costume. He found her near the prop table, organizing cables with the precision of a surgeon. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. She didn't look up. "Vanessa's just noise. I'm used to it." "It's not just her," he said, stepping closer. "This whole thing, the show. The pressurite's getting to me." Lila's eyes met his, searching. "You're not the one who has to wrangle her ego every night. What's really eating you?" "Elliot." He wanted to tell her that the wedding scene felt like a betrayal, not of the audience, but of himself. That every time he slipped that fake ring onto Vanessa's finger, he imagined a different life, one where he could love openly, where he could choose Lila, not as a lover, but as the family he'd never had. But the words stuck in his throat, trapped by years of fear. The break ended, and Lila called everyone back to places. Elliot returned to the stage, the spotlight blinding him to everything but the script. Yet, as he delivered his lines, his mind wandered to the first time he'd met Lila. 2 years ago, during a disastrous production of Rent. She'd caught him crying in the green room after a fight with his ex. a closeted actor who'd left him for a normal life. Lila hadn't pried. She'd just handed him a tissue and said, "You're enough, Kane. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Now, as the rehearsal dragged on, Elliot felt the weight of those words. He was enough, but not for this role. Not for this life of pretending. The scene ended, and the cast applauded themselves. But Elliot's eyes found Lila in the wings. She gave him a small nod, a silent promise that she saw him. Really saw him. As the theater emptied, Elliot stayed behind, claiming he needed to run lines. Lila was still there, packing up her station. The silence between them was heavy. Electric. "You ever think about running away from all this?" he asked suddenly. She laughed, but it was hollow. "And go where? This theater's the only place I've ever felt like I belong." "Me too," he admitted. "But sometimes I wonder if it's the stage I love, or the person who makes it feel like home." Lila froze, her hands stilling on the clipboard. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, softly, she said, "Careful, Kane. You're starting to sound like one of your characters." But he wasn't acting. Not tonight. The next morning, Chicago's skyline glittered under a rare autumn sun. But inside the theater, the air was thick with tension. Opening night loomed, and the cast was a mess of nerves and egos. Elliot barely slept, haunted by the almost confession he'd made to Lila. Her words, "careful," Kane echoed in his mind. A warning and an invitation he couldn't untangle. He arrived early, slipping into the theater before the chaos of the day began. The stage was empty, but Lila was already there, checking lighting cues with the precision of a conductor. Her auburn hair caught the glow of a work light, and Elliot's heart stuttered. She was the only constant in this world of fleeting applause and fragile egos. Early for once, Lila teased, glancing up from her clipboard, nervous about the producer. Elliot shrugged, shoving his hands into his jacket pockets. "Not really. Just needed to be here." She raised an eyebrow but didn't press. That was Lila always knowing when to push and when to let him breathe. They worked in silence for a while, resetting props and double-checking cues. It was their rhythm, a dance they perfected over years of late nights and shared silences. But today, every brush of their shoulders felt like a spark. The cast trickled in, and Vanessa's arrival shattered the calm. She stormed in, complaining about her costume's fit, her voice a razor slicing through the room. "Lila, this dress is a disaster. Fix it, or I'm not going on." Lila's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "I'll call wardrobe. Give me 10 minutes. Vanessa scoffed, tossing her hair. "Make it 5. Some of us have actual talent to focus on." Elliot's fists clenched. He'd had enough of Vanessa's venom, especially when it was aimed at Lila. "Lay off her," he snapped, louder than he meant to. The room went quiet, every eye on him. Vanessa smirked. "Oh, look, the leading man's got a crush on the help." The word crush landed like a punch. Elliot's face burned, not because it was true in the way Vanessa meant, but because it was too close to a truth he wasn't ready to face. Lila shot him a look half warning, half gratitude, and quickly changed the subject, calling for a run-through of Act 1. The rehearsal was brutal. Elliot's lines felt hollow, each romantic declaration to Vanessa a mockery of the feelings he couldn't voice. He stole glances at Lila, who stood in the wings, her headset a shield against the world. She was everything Vanessa was trill. Grounded. Someone who saw the person behind the performer. During a break, Elliot found her in the prop room, sorting through fake flowers for the wedding scene. "You didn't have to do that," she said without looking up. "Stand up to Vanessa. I mean, I can handle her." I know you can, he said, leaning against a crate. But you shouldn't have to. She's a bully. And I'm sick of it. Lila's hand stilled. You're sweet, Elliot. But you've got enough on your plate. That producer's coming tonight. You need to focus. I'm trying, he said, his voice raw. But it's hard when I'm up there pretending to love someone I can't stand. While the person he stopped, the words catching in his throat. Lila's eyes softened, but her voice was cautious. Don't say something you can't take back. I'm not, he said, stepping closer. Lila, you know me better than anyone. And I know you feel it too, whatever it is between us. She looked away, her fingers tightening around a prop bouquet. Elliot, we can't. You're on the verge of something big. And I'm not built for the spotlight. I've spent my whole life hiding who I am. Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. Lila had grown up in a town where being out meant being ostracized. She'd told him once, late at night, about the whispers in her high school, the way her family had looked the other way when she'd brought a girl home. Elliot's own coming out had been easier as parents were supportive, but the theater world was its own battlefield, full of expectations and stereotypes. I'm not asking you to be in the spotlight, he said softly. I'm asking you to be with me. Not like that. Not romantically. But as my family. The one I choose. Lila's breath hitched. And for a moment, he thought she might cry. But she just nodded. Her voice barely a whisper. We'll talk after the show. Okay. The rest of the day passed in a blur of costumes and cues. As opening night approached, the theater buzzed with anticipation. The Broadway producer, a stern woman named Claudia Stein, arrived, her presence a reminder of what was at stake. Elliot felt the weight of it all: his career, his truth, and the fragile connection he shared with Lila. When the curtain rose, he threw himself into the role, but every line felt like a betrayal. The audience laughed and gasped, but all he could think about was Lila, watching from the wings, her headset glowing like a halo. The wedding scene was the heart of love's last act, and it was killing Elliot. As he stood at the altar, Vanessa's cloying perfume choking him, he delivered his vows with a conviction he didn't feel. The audience was captivated, but his eyes kept drifting to the wings, where Lila stood, clipboard in hand, her face unreadable. The scene required him to slip a ring onto Vanessa's finger, to look into her eyes and swear eternal love. Each word was a lie, not just to the audience, but to himself. He'd spent years hiding, playing the charming leading man while his heart belonged to someone who'd never be in the script. Lila wasn't just his friend, she was his anchor, the one person who made the chaos of his life make sense. As the scene ended and the audience erupted, Elliot's chest felt tight. He bowed, smiled, and let Vanessa bask in the applause. But his mind was elsewhere. Backstage, Lila was already moving, directing the crew with her usual efficiency. He wanted to pull her aside, to finish the conversation they'd started. But Claudia Stein was waiting in the lobby, and Margaret had made it clear, impress her, or kiss Broadway goodbye. The post-show reception was a blur of champagne and small talk. Claudia was all business, her sharp eyes dissecting Elliot's performance. You've got potential, she said, her voice clipped. But you're holding back. There's a truth missing in your delivery. Elliot's stomach twisted. She was right, but not for the reasons she thought. He excused himself, weaving through the crowd to find Lila. She was outside, leaning against the theater's brick wall, the Chicago wind tugging at her jacket. You were good tonight, she said, her voice soft but guarded. Claudia seemed impressed. I don't care about Claudia, he said, surprising himself with the intensity of his words. Lila, I meant what I said earlier. I can't keep doing this pretending on stage. Pretending off stage. I want a life where I don't have to hide. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face. And what does that life look like? Elliot, you're about to get everything you've worked for. Broadway. Fame. The whole deal. You don't need me dragging you down. You're not dragging me down, he said, his voice breaking. You're the only thing keeping me up. Lila's expression softened. But before she could respond, Vanessa's voice cut through the night. There you are. Elliot. Claudia wants to talk more. Don't keep her waiting. Elliot ignored her, his focus locked on Lila. But Vanessa wasn't done. She stepped closer, her smile venomous. What's this? A little backstage romance. Careful, darling. You don't want to ruin your image with her. Lila stiffened, her face a mask of control. Go back inside. Vanessa, she said, her voice ice cold. Vanessa laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, I'm going. But don't think I haven't noticed the way you two look at each other. It's pathetic. She sauntered off, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. Elliot's hands shook with anger, but Lila just sighed. She's not worth it, she said. But she's not wrong about one thing. You've got a lot to lose. I don't care about losing Broadway, he said, stepping closer. I care about losing you. Lila's eyes widened, and for a moment, he thought she might pull away. But instead, she reached out, her hand brushing his arm. You're not going to lose me, she said softly. But we need to be smart about this. The world's not as kind as you want it to be. They stood there, the city's hum a distant backdrop to their quiet. Elliot wanted to say more, to tell her how much she meant to him. But the weight of the night off Claudia, Vanessa, and the looming second performance kept him silent. The next day, rehearsals were relentless. Margaret was on edge, pushing the cast to polish every moment for Claudia's return. Elliot's performance faltered. His heart wasn't in the role. He caught Lila's eye during a break, and she gave him a small, encouraging nod. It was enough to keep him going, but barely. That night, as he prepared for the second show, he found a note slipped into his script. In Lila's neat handwriting, it read, "You're enough. Always have been." His throat tightened. He tucked the note into his pocket, a talisman against the chaos. But the chaos was coming. During the performance, Vanessa pushed too far. In the wedding scene, she improvised, leaning in for a kiss that wasn't scripted. The audience gasped, thinking it was part of the show. But Elliot froze, his mind screaming. He pulled back, breaking character, and the stage went silent. The silence was deafening. Elliot stood frozen, Vanessa's lips inches from his, the audience holding its breath. He could feel Lila's gaze from the wings, sharp and steady, grounding him. Then, with a forced laugh, he stepped back, salvaging the scene with an improvised line, "Darling, let's save that for the honeymoon." The audience laughed. The tension broke, but Elliot's heart was pounding. Backstage, Lila was waiting, her face a storm of concern and anger. What the hell was that? She whispered, pulling him into a corner. She crossed a line, Elliot said, his voice shaking. I'm done letting her push me around. Lila's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. You can't lose it out there, Elliot. Not with Claudia watching. You've worked too hard for this. I don't care about Claudia. He snapped, louder than he meant to. A few crew members glanced over, and he lowered his voice. I care about you. About us. I can't keep pretending I'm someone I'm not. Lila's hand hovered near his, but she didn't touch him. We'll figure this out, she said. But not here. Not now. The rest of the show was a blur. Elliot powered through, but his mind was on Lila's words, on the note still burning a hole in his pocket. When the curtain fell, the applause was thunderous, but he felt hollow. Claudia approached him again, her praise more reserved this time. You recovered well, she said, but I still sense you're holding back. Find your truth, Elliot. That's what makes a star. He nodded, barely listening, and made his way to the green room. Vanessa was there, reapplying her lipstick, her smirk infuriating. Nice save out there, she said, but let's not make a habit of breaking character. It's unprofessional. Elliot's temper flared. Unprofessional. You improvised a kiss that wasn't in the script. You're lucky I didn't walk off. Her eyes narrowed. Careful, Elliot. You don't want rumors starting about you and certain people. The threat was clear, and it took everything in him not to lash out. Instead, he turned and left, finding Lila in the prop room, her sanctuary. She was sorting through costumes, her movements deliberate, as if she could organize her emotions the same way. She's going to out us, Elliot said, his voice low. Maybe not today, but she will. Lila's hands stilled. Let her try? I've dealt with worse than Vanessa. But Elliot wasn't so sure. The theater world was small, and gossip traveled fast. He'd seen careers derailed by less. What if she's right? He asked. What if being honest cost me everything? Lila turned to him, her eyes fierce. Then you build something new. Something real. You're not alone in this, Elliot. Her words were a lifeline, but they couldn't erase the fear. He thought of his parents, who'd supported him but worried about the industry's cruelty. He thought of Lila's past, the scars she carried from a world that didn't accept her. And he thought of the life they could have, one where they didn't have to hide. The next few days were a tightrope walk. Vanessa's barbs grew sharper, her comments laced with innuendo. The crew noticed, whispering among themselves, and Elliot felt the walls closing in. He and Lila stole moments when they could quiet conversations in the wings. A shared coffee during a late-night strike. Each moment felt like a rebellion, a step toward something true. One night, after a particularly grueling rehearsal, they stayed late, sitting on the empty stage. The theater was dark, save for a single ghost light casting long shadows. You ever think about what it'd be like to just be ourselves? Elliot asked. Lila leaned back, her hands braced against the stage. All the time. But it's not that simple. Not for people like us. I know, he said, but I want to try. With you. She looked at him, her guard down for the first time in days. Your trouble, Kane, she said, but there was a smile in her voice. They sat in silence, the weight of their unspoken dreams filling the space. For the first time, Elliot felt like he could breathe. But the calm wouldn't last. Vanessa's threats were growing bolder, and Claudia's final decision loomed. The theater was a pressure cooker, and Elliot was at its boiling point. Vanessa's insinuations had spread like wildfire, and by midweek, the whispers were impossible to ignore. Crew members avoided his gaze, and Margaret's usual brusqueness had a new edge. Lila, ever the professional, kept the production on track, but Elliot could see the strain in her eyes. During a lunch break, he overheard two stagehands gossiping. Heard Vanessa's got dirt on Elliot. One said something about him and the stage manager. The other laughed. What? Like they're a thing. That's rich. Elliot's stomach churned. He wanted to scream that it wasn't like that, not in the way they thought, but the truth was just as dangerous. He and Lila weren't lovers, but their bond was deeper. A chosen family forged in shared struggles. Explaining that to a world obsessed with labels felt impossible. He found Lila in the control booth. Her headset off for once. "They're talking," he said, closing the door. "Vanessa's spreading rumors." Lila's jaw tightened. "Let them talk. We know the truth." "But what if it gets out?" he pressed. "What if it ruins everything?" She turned to him, her voice steady but raw. "Elliot, I've been outed before. It hurts. But you survive. You rebuild. And you don't let people like Vanessa win." Her strength anchored him, but it couldn't erase the fear. That night's performance was flawless on the surface, but Elliot felt like a fraud. The wedding scene was torture. Vanessa's smug smile a constant reminder of her power. When the curtain fell, he bolted backstage, needing air, needing Lila. She was in the prop room, as always, a safe haven amid the storm. "You okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. "No," he admitted, sinking onto a crate. "I'm terrified of losing this Broadway, the stage. You." Lila sat beside him, her shoulder brushing his. "You're not going to lose me," she said. "But you need to decide what you're willing to fight for. Broadway's a dream, but it's not everything." Her words hit hard. Elliot had spent years chasing the spotlight, believing it would validate him. But now, with Lila beside him, he realized the stage wasn't his home. She was. The next day, Claudia returned for her final evaluation. The cast was on edge, and Vanessa was insufferable, her every move calculated to undermine Elliot. During the wedding scene, she pushed again, lingering too long in his space, her hand on his arm a deliberate provocation. He gritted his teeth, delivering his lines with a precision born of anger. Backstage, Lila pulled him aside. "You're letting her get to you," she said. "Don't give her that power." "I'm trying," he said, his voice breaking. "But I'm so tired of pretending." "Then stop," she said simply. "Be you. Whatever that looks like." Her words stayed with him through the final act. When the show ended, Claudia approached, her expression unreadable. "You've got raw talent, Elliot," she said. "But you're still hiding something. Figure it out, and you'll be unstoppable." He nodded, but his mind was on Lila. That night, as the cast celebrated another successful show, he pulled her into the empty auditorium. "I'm done hiding," he said. "I don't know what that means for Broadway, but I know I want you in my life. Not just as my stage manager, but as my family." Lila's eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "You're my family too," she said. "But we need to be ready for what comes next." What came next was Vanessa. She cornered them outside the theater, her phone in hand. A photo of them from earlier too close. Too real. "This could make things messy for you," she said, her voice dripping with malice. "Unless you play nice." Elliot's blood ran cold, but Lila stepped forward, her voice steady. "Do it, Vanessa. Show the world. We're not afraid of you." Vanessa's threat hung in the air, a blade ready to fall. Elliot's heart raced, but Lila's defiance was a shield. She stood tall, her eyes locked on Vanessa's, daring her to follow through. For a moment, Vanessa faltered, her smirk wavering. Then she turned and walked away, leaving them in the cold Chicago night. "She's not done," Elliot said, his voice low. "No," Lila agreed. "But neither are we." They returned to the theater, the weight of Vanessa's photo pressing on them. Elliot couldn't shake the image him and Lila, caught in a moment of vulnerability. It wasn't romantic, but it was intimate, a snapshot of their bond that the world wouldn't understand. The next morning, the rumors exploded. Vanessa hadn't released the photo, but she'd whispered enough to fuel the fire. The cast was abuzz, and Margaret called a meeting. "We're a family here," she said, her voice sharp. "Gossip doesn't belong in my theater. Focus on the show." But the damage was done. Elliot felt the crew's eyes on him, their curiosity a weight he couldn't shake. Lila, as always, was unshaken, her focus on the production unwavering. But during a break, she pulled him aside. "We need to talk to Margaret," she said, "before Vanessa twists this further." Elliot hesitated. Coming clean to Margaret meant risking everything: his role, his shot at Broadway, his place in this world. But Lila's steady gaze gave him courage. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." They found Margaret in her office, a cluttered space filled with scripts and cigarette smoke. She listened as they explained not the full truth, but enough that they were close, that Vanessa was using their friendship to stir trouble. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "I don't care who you love or don't love," she said, "but I won't have my production derailed by petty drama. Handle it." Her words were a relief, but not a solution. Vanessa's influence was growing, and Elliot knew she wouldn't stop. That night's performance was electric, the tension fueling his acting. The audience felt it, their applause deafening. But Elliot's mind was on the backstage battle. After the show, he and Lila stayed late, sitting in the empty auditorium. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Not of Vanessa, but of what this means. If I come out, if we're honest about who we are, what happens next?" Lila took his hand, her grip firm. "We face it together. That's what family does." Her words were a lifeline, but the fear lingered. The next day, Vanessa upped the ante, dropping hints to a gossip blogger who'd infiltrated the crew. By evening, a vague but damning post was circulating online. Rising star in Chicago theater caught in backstage scandal. No names, no proof, but the implications were clear. Elliot's phone buzzed with messages from friends, his parents, even his agent. He ignored them, his focus on Lila. They met in the prop room, their safe haven. "This is it," he said. "If we don't take control, she will." Lila nodded, her face resolute. "Then we tell our story, not hers." They spent the night drafting a statement, not a full coming out, but a declaration of their bond, their chosen family. It was honest, raw, and terrifying. They posted it on Elliot's social media. A simple message: "The stage is my home, and Lila Harper is my family. No rumors can change that." The response was immediate. Support poured in from fans, from the theater community, even from strangers. But there were hate comments too, sharp and cruel. Elliot's heart sank, but Lila squeezed his hand. "We're not alone," she said. "Look at all these people standing with us." The next performance was their best yet. The audience sensed the truth in Elliot's performance, the rawness of his emotions. Claudia was there again, and afterward, she pulled him aside. "That's what I was waiting for," she said. "That's the truth I needed to see." The post changed everything. Elliot and Lila's statement was a spark, igniting support and backlash in equal measure. By morning, the theater was a battleground of opinions. Some crew members clapped Elliot on the back, their smiles genuine. Others avoided him, their silence louder than words. Vanessa, predictably, was furious, her influence waning as the cast rallied around Elliot and Lila. Margaret called them into her office again. "You've stirred up a storm," she said, exhaling a plume of smoke. "But it's your storm. Own it." Elliot nodded, his resolve hardening. "We will." The final week of performances was a crucible. Claudia's interest in Elliot grew, but so did the scrutiny. Reporters lingered outside the theater, and social media buzzed with speculation. Elliot and Lila leaned on each other, their bond a shield against the chaos. Late-night talks became their refuge, moments of honesty in a world of pretense. One night, as they sat on the stage under the ghost light, Lila opened up about her past. "I left home at 18, she said, her voice soft. "My family didn't kick me out, but they made it clear I wasn't welcome. This theater, it's the only place I've ever felt safe." Elliot's heart ached for her. "You're my home," he said. "Not this stage. Not Broadway. You." She smiled. A rare, unguarded moment. "You're mine too." The final performance loomed, and with it, Claudia's decision. Elliot poured everything into the role, his emotions raw and unfiltered. The wedding scene, once a torture, became a catharsis. He spoke the vows with a truth that wasn't about Vanessa, but about the family he'd chosen, Lila. The audience felt it. The applause was deafening, a standing ovation that shook the theater. Backstage, Lila hugged him, her eyes shining. "You were incredible," she said. Claudia approached, her expression warm for the first time. "You found your truth," she said. "I want you for my next project in New York, but only if you bring that honesty with you." Elliot's heart soared, but his eyes found Lila. "I need to talk to my stage manager first," he said. Claudia raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Don't take too long." Outside, under the Chicago stars, Elliot and Lila stood together. "What do you think?" he asked. "New York." She laughed. "The sound light and free. Only if I'm running your show." They talked late into the night, dreaming of a future where they could be themselves out. Proud and unafraid. Vanessa's threats faded, her power broken by their honesty. The theater, once a place of secrets, became a stage for their truth. As they walked back inside, Elliot took Lila's hand. "I'd rather marry you than pretend to love anyone else," he said, half joking, half serious. Lila grinned. "Careful, Kane. I'd make a terrible wife, but I'm one hell of a stage manager." The final curtain fell, but for Elliot and Lila, it was only the beginning. Claudia's offer was a golden ticket, but it came with a choice: chase the spotlight or build a life true to themselves. They chose both. In the weeks that followed, they planned their move to New York. Elliot signed with Claudia's production, a gritty drama that demanded the raw honesty he'd finally embraced. Lila joined as stage manager, her skills in demand after the Chicago run. They found a small apartment in Brooklyn, a place where they could be themselves. No masks required. Vanessa faded into the background, her threats empty without an audience. The theater community, once a minefield of gossip, rallied around them. Fans sent letters, praising their courage, and strangers shared stories of their own struggles. Elliot and Lila read each one, their bond growing stronger with every shared truth. One night, in their new apartment, they sat on the floor, surrounded by unpacked boxes. Lila held up a photo from the Chicago Theater, candid of them laughing backstage. Her headset askew, his eyes bright with joy. "This is us," she said. "Not the stage, not the roles, just us." Elliot took her hand, his voice steady. "I meant what I said. You're my family, Lila. Always will be." She squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening. "And you're mine." Their journey wasn't easy. New York was a whirlwind of auditions, rehearsals, and the constant pressure to perform. But they faced it together, their bond a beacon in the chaos. Elliot came out publicly, his statement simple but powerful: "I'm gay, and I'm proud. My family is the one I choose. And that's enough." Lila followed, her own coming out quieter but no less brave. The theater became their sanctuary again. But this time, it was different. They weren't hiding. They were building something Newa legacy of honesty, of love that didn't need to fit a script. The stage was no longer a place to pretend, but a platform to tell stories that mattered. Years later, at a small theater festival, they premiered a play they'd written together. It was their story, raw and real, about two people who found family in each other against all odds. The audience wept, then cheered, and as the curtain fell, Elliot and Lila stood side by side, their hands clasped. They'd chosen each other, not the spotlight, but the light found them anyway. And in that moment, under the glow of the stage, they knew they were enough.